and welcome to Used Car Heaven, the programme that helps you, the viewer, get behind the wheel of your next car.
This week's viewer is Colin Armiger. With a budget of around £12,000, Colin is after a car that can not only satisfy his need for extra space, but will also be affordable. But if none of my three cars catch Colin's eye, then Jon Slattery will be here with an alternative. And of course, our resident car doctor Simon Hughes will be here to solve some more of your mechanical problems. Well, time's getting on, so without further ado, let's meet this week's viewer and find out exactly what they're after.
I'm Colin Armiger, currently drive a Volkswagen Golf, but I'm looking to upgrade to a bigger car, a family car, for the budget of about £12,000.
Well, with the budget that Colin has, there are certainly plenty of cars for him to consider. But what will he think of our first car? Our first car tonight is the estate version of a highly desirable saloon. Launched in 2001, this car is the latest in a long line of sound, well-built, reliable cars. The question is, however, whether the car's virtues will overcome its bland exterior. So what does Colin think of the Volkswagen Passat Estate?
Well, what do you think of the Passat Estate?
Beautiful car.
Nicely made.
Yeah, solid. And when you put your foot down, it certainly moves.
What about the size of this? Now, this is obviously quite a bit bigger than the car you drive at the moment.
Yeah, it is, but I don't know, it just feels so solid. It doesn't seem as though you're driving a big car.
No.
Or it's so smooth. And
it's lavishly equipped as well. I mean, this would be about £19,000 new, but there are lots of Passats around for, again, the sort of budget that you're looking to spend on. Anything about this car that you don't like, or are you just sold on it completely?
Just sold on it completely. I can't really see anything, although I'd have to drive it for maybe a few weeks.
Yeah.
But I can't really
First impressions.
First impressions, very good. Yeah.
The original Passat was launched as a no-nonsense family saloon and estate car in 1973. However, over time, like the rest of the VW range, the Passat has evolved into a car for the middle classes, with refinement and reliability the name of the game.
So, why should you buy a Passat? Well, for a start, it's a VW, so it's well built, it's reliable, and it's hugely desirable. Now, this model that we have here is actually quite new, but the Passat has been around in various guises since the 1970s, so there are plenty of them out there on the second-hand market to choose from. On the downside, the latest model doesn't have the best load space in its class, but it always feels solid, if not perhaps the most entertaining car to drive. So will Colin like the look of the VW Passat Estate?
One of the problems that will affect Colin and other potential Passat buyers is the car's strong residuals. New cars hold around 50% of their original value, so second-hand models aren't cheap either. We think that for Colin's 12 grand, he could get a good 2001 20-valve Sport or a 1990 2.5-litre TDI V6. In general, you can expect to pay upwards of £1,000 for a very early example.
Well, Colin, that's the VW Passat. I think you enjoyed that.
Yeah, definitely. Very good car. Very good family car.
So as a replacement for your Golf, would you be happy with that, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, very sturdy. Good car.
And the family would like it too, I think.
They'd love it, yeah, definitely.
What about in terms of value for money?
Yeah, good car. I mean, plenty of safety features on it. Good all-round family car.
And for 12 grand, you'd get a really, really good one. You might have to scour hard, to find exactly the right one, but you'd get a good value for money car for that.
But when you come to sell it, it's still going to be worth.
Residuals are cracking on that, aren't they?
Yeah.
Well, that's the first car out of the way. So let's see what's next for you to drive.
All right then.
Although based on a traditional family hatch, when this car was launched in the late 90s, not only did it set new levels of versatility, it did so in a way that was not just stylish, but also affordable. Let's see what Colin thinks of the Vauxhall Zafira.
Colin, at the moment you've got your Golf. What about the Vauxhall Zafira? I mean, it's very different, isn't it? It's a people carrier, but not quite a people carrier in some respects.
Yeah, it drives very well, very light, considering it's a people carrier, yeah.
Do you need the sort of space and flexibility of something like this, which would convert to 7 seats?
Well, yeah, I have 2 children, so anything that makes room for them, yeah.
So what are your main sort of impressions about the Zafira?
It's a very good car, drives smoothly, good all-round car, high up, good view. So, yeah, very good.
Now, one of the most important tests for you, I guess, is what will your wife and what will the kids think of this? If you said, we're going to go and get a Zafira. Do you think they'll...
I think the kids would like it, but I don't know whether my wife would, because she prefers to drive a small car.
I think it's slightly deceptive. It looks and feels bigger than it actually is.
Yeah, she probably would get used to it. So I know she does like a smaller car.
Yeah.
Big enough for the family, but smaller than this.
Launched in 1999, the Zafira was an instant hit, with the car's unbelievable versatility a major selling point. The standard 7 seats can be manipulated into numerous positions, making it an ideal compromise of an estate, a family car and an MPV. And with a wide selection of engines, including an LPG option and a turbo, low running costs and a large dealer network, it's easy to see why the Zafira stole the march on many of its competitors.
So why buy a Zafira? Well, for a start, they're good to drive, but more importantly, to own. Most models are insurance groups 6 to 7, servicing costs are low, and another bonus is that they hold on to their value pretty well too.
Because the Zafira has been such a huge success, there are plenty of used examples around, so you can afford to be picky. Prices for early T-regged cars start at around £6,000 and go all the way up to Colin's limit. For his £12,000, he could easily get an O2 plated Elegance for around £11,500.
Well, Colin, that's car number 2, the Vauxhall Zafira. Tell me what you thought.
Yeah, it's a good family car, not quite as good as a Passat.
So it doesn't quite have that sort of Germanic feel to it, that solidly built feel, does it?
No, it doesn't, no. The gearbox isn't as good. It doesn't feel as solid on the road, really.
Good high-up driving position. It's good to drive on the road as well.
Yeah, it's a good drive. I mean, you've got the seats that go down in the back.
I think the kids would like that, wouldn't they?
They would, yeah.
So overall, the Passat's taking it over the Zafira at the moment?
Yeah, just about, on the build quality and the drive, really.
Now, I think I know where you're going at the moment in terms of what you like, but we've got another car for you to drive. Jon Slattery will have an alternative suggestion as well coming in part 2. But before all of that, let's see what Simon Hughes, our world-famous car doctor, is operating on today.
Today we're looking at reasons why cars lose power when you're driving along. We've got 3 main sort of popular reasons really, and we can see under the bonnet of this car exactly what we're talking about. The classic one is if a car isn't serviced regularly, the air filter, which is based here on the car, should look like that, but it gets all dirty and mucky and gets blocked, and basically it strangles the engine of air. That's your first thing. Also, we've got a fuel filter that lives just down here. Same thing, you get contaminated fuel from garage forecourts and it blocks with water and general dirt in there. Blocks it, a bit like this, restricts the fuel going to the engine. So that's one problem, blocked filters. The second problem is a catalytic converter, which all new cars have now. They have had them since about 1994, and it's basically your front exhaust box in your exhaust system has got this monolith inside which is made of ceramic, and it actually breaks up and can go through into the back box of the exhaust and block it, effectively strangling the exhaust, so it makes your car lose power. It can also become contaminated with oil and with fuel, and again can block it. So a catalytic converter, that's an expensive option, but nonetheless is quite a popular one. Finally, you can get the fuel tank breather pipe blocking up, and what that means is that as we draw fuel out of the tank to the engine, the breather doesn't allow air to go into the tank and replace the fuel. So you get a bit of an effect whereby if you imagine sucking on a plastic pop bottle and it collapses, that's the effect that we get with the fuel tank, and it reduces the amount of fuel that can come to the engine. Now you can diagnose that one really easily. So if you're driving down the road and your engine starts to lose power, if you stop, jump out of the car, undo the fuel filler cap, and if you get a big hiss and a rush of air going in, you know that you've got a breather problem on your fuel tank. So you've got 3 main problems there. So just to recap, check your filters, check to make sure your catalytic converter is okay, and finally check to make sure the fuel system isn't blocked or a blocked breather. And with those done, you should hopefully have happy motoring. I'll be back next week with more tips on how to keep your car going on the road.
So far on this week's show, Colin Armiger has driven the VW Passat Estate and also the Vauxhall Zafira. And in part 2 of the programme, it's a chance for him to drive this week's third and final car. And if you're tempted by any of the cars on this week's show, we'll be telling you what you need to look out for. Join us in a couple of minutes. Hello and welcome back to Used Car Heaven. On this week's show, Colin Armiger is looking for affordable and desirable family transport for around £12,000. So far he's driven the VW Passat Estate and also the Vauxhall Zafira, but now it's time for him to drive this week's third and final car.
There are very few car manufacturers that are as well respected and desired as the maker of our third car. But will bulletproof build quality, reliability and a 3-pointed star be enough to make Colin want to spend his hard-earned cash on a Mercedes C-Class Estate?
Colin, what are your first impressions of the Mercedes Estate?
It's a smooth drive, nice drive. Does seem a bigger car though.
It feels it, doesn't it?
It feels the bonnet feels very long. Well, looks very long on it as well.
I mean, I don't think it actually is in terms of size compared to the Passat. I think it'd be they're pretty close in overall sort of size and width, but it gives that impression, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Would you be swayed by buying a prestige marque like this Mercedes?
Well, I mean, a Mercedes, it's a good car, and you'd always want to own one, but the running costs, you've got to think of the running cost and servicing. I don't know. I'd have to think.
So just think, when this car was brand new, it was over £25,000. Now, with 60,000 miles on the clock, this would be round about £10,000 or £11,000.
Yeah.
It's quite a lot of car for the money if you're prepared to go older and buy an older car, isn't it?
Yeah, but to have 60,000 miles already on the clock, you're keeping it for 5 years. I mean, what's it going to be worth?
This particular C-Class arrived in 1993 and is now beginning to look dated, especially next to the latest car. But despite this, the C-Class is still a well-built car with a fine interior and a wide range of engines, including a 1.8, 2.2 diesel and a 2.8 V6. On the downside though, the Merc isn't the best for load space, mainly because of its sloping roofline.
Now, for the same price as an 18-month-old Passat Estate, Colin could consider the prestige of a Mercedes-Benz. But for his £12,000 budget, he's going to have to look at an older car, something like this, a 5-year-old C200 Classic Estate. However, it has got 60,000 miles on the clock. It might bother some people, but not for others who just want to drive round in a Mercedes. But the most important thing is, what will Colin think of it?
Although the C-Class is a Mercedes and wasn't particularly cheap new, there are plenty of models around, most of which are very reasonably priced, starting as little as £5,000 for a 96 P-Reg example and going up to around £18,000 for a 1998 AMG model. For Colin's money, he could easily pick up a good T-Reg Sport or Classic model.
Well, Colin, that's the third and final car that you've driven, the Mercedes-Benz C-Class Estate. I think this is getting a bit long in the tooth now, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't drive too good. A few rattles, not that good really.
I mean, when this car was new in its sort of era a few years ago, it was a great car, but up against sort of the modern day and the latest versions of the Passat and the Zafira you've driven today, it's doesn't quite do it, does it?
No. It's just getting too old now. If it was newer, maybe.
So not even the Mercedes badge would sway it for you to spend £10,000, £11,000 on this sort of car?
No, not with the mileage on it, no.
So we don't want a final decision just yet, because we've got one more car for you to have a look at, which Jon Slattery has got. This is our alternative car for this week.
Launched onto an unsuspecting British public back in the late 90s, the Chrysler Personal Transportation Cruiser really lifted the lid of MPV design. And looking at it, Well, it's not really hard to see why. Snarling away deep inside that hot rod-inspired body, you'll find either a 2-litre or a 2.2-litre engine, capable of propelling this daddy-cool MPV to 60 miles per hour in around the 10-second mark and onto 116 miles per hour. This is just as much at home around town as it is on the open road. It's got an awful lot of grip and the handling is absolutely excellent. Now, some may say that it lacks a certain finesse when it comes to going around bends at high speed. But let's face it, you're going to have the family in the front and in the back, all packed in nice and tightly, so you're not going to be hitting those apexes at huge speeds. No, you're not. No, not a good idea. The other thing I really like about this is the fact that the floor is so low, so getting in and getting out is very easy. The interior has a vast 3.4 cubic meters of space, so there's absolutely loads of room for the kids. It also comes with a huge amount of kit. You get a CD player, you get cruise control, you get air conditioning, airbags to name but a few. The only downside to this car really is that the plastics here in the front, well, they're not as good as you'd find in its competitors. When it comes time to service this cruiser, don't worry because you won't be crippled by huge bills. In fact, they are similar to its more popular competitors. And couple this with very reasonable parts prices and an impressive 37 miles per gallon figure, you'll find this MPV isn't just a pretty face. Despite high residuals, around 55%, which I have to say is very impressive, there are an awful lot of bargains out there. Second-hand PT Cruisers range from £9,500 for a 2000 with high mileage to £17,000 for a nearly new one with low mileage. Although the PT Cruiser has high levels of practicality and comfort, American retro styling isn't going to be everybody's cup of tea. So if you want something that's going to be boring and bland, well then I suggest you stick with one of Ian's cars. But if you want something that's going to put a smile on your face every time you sit into it, well then I think the PT Cruiser is worth a closer look.
Well, Colin, Jon Slattery thought that the Chrysler PT Cruiser might be an alternative to the Passat, the Zafira and the Mercedes C-Class. What do you think of that?
Not really, no.
Not keen?
No, not at all, no.
I mean, build quality, looks...
Not a patch on European cars.
Doesn't appeal to you?
No.
Okay, so we need to get a decision from you. Is it going to be the Passat, the Zafira, or the Mercedes-Benz C-Class? Let's see. Well, Colin, it's decision time now. You've driven the Passat, the Zafira and the Mercedes-Benz C-Class, so we want a decision. 3, 2, 1. What are you going to place number 3?
The Mercedes.
Mercedes C-Class.
Yeah.
Few years old, a few thousand miles on the clock. But
That's it. Too high a mileage for that amount of money.
And too old.
Too old. Just getting a bit past it.
Just doesn't do it for you.
No.
The technology is too old in that sort of
It
car
is,
now,
yeah,
isn't it, really?
yeah.
So the Merc is number 3. What are you placing second?
The Zafira.
Vauxhall Zafira.
Yeah.
Good car to drive.
Yeah, it's a good car to drive. Plenty of room for the kids in the back.
Clever 7-seater with those flex seats at the back.
For extra luggage, but doesn't quite get there.
Not that sort of sturdy feel, which I guess this is number
Yeah,
1.
number 1. which is
VW Passat.
The Passat.
Tell me what you liked about this. You're a VW fan, aren't you?
Yeah, it's all round good build, great to drive, just all round good car.
Would you go for the diesel like this is over the petrol, do you think?
If it had the turbo like this one.
50 miles to the gallon, I mean...
Yeah, you can't go wrong.
You can't go wrong
No.
there, can you?
No.
So this is number 1.
Yeah.
Let's go and have another drive and just see what we think again.
Right. As soon as I saw you pull up in this, I knew I'd like it before I drove it. Especially when I saw it was 4-wheel drive.
Yeah. Great thing about buying a Passat, or in fact any VW, is that you're getting the build quality, you're getting the reliability, and you know it's going to hold its value pretty well.
Yeah, that's why I bought my Golf in the first place, and I definitely think about buying another one.
Yeah.
Maybe a bigger one, a Passat, because when you come to exchange it, you know you're going to get a good price.
You get a reasonable price.
Other cars drop
Yeah.
a lot more than Volkswagen.
Absolutely.
So if you've been tempted by any of this week's cars, here's what you should look out for. First up, the Passat. Despite VW's renowned build quality, you need to watch out for knocking noises coming from the front suspension arms. If these fail, you'll be looking at around £100 each for replacements. The doors are another problem area, with reports that they lock and unlock on their own. Again, replacements will cost around £100. Next up is the Zafira, and the good news is that they're generally fault-free. However, do keep an eye on the rear brakes of early models, which have been known to seize and cause premature wearing on the pads and discs. While some 1800 models suffer from burnt-out spark plugs and coil packs, meaning starting the car can become troublesome. Finally, it's the Mercedes C-Class. Key areas to watch here are the alloys that have a tendency to corrode, while high-mileage examples are prone to oil leaks around the rear differentials. And should you be unlucky enough to lose the key, expect a big bill, because the keys have an electronic transponder in them and are expensive to replace.
Colin Armiger was looking for a new family car with a budget of £12,000, so we offered him the prestige of the Mercedes-Benz C-Class Estate. But 60,000 miles on the clock and 4 or 5 year old car wasn't enough to tempt him. Third place for the Merc. Second place went to the very good Vauxhall Zafira. Good to drive, clever Flex 7 seating system, but it still wasn't enough to tempt him. He put that second. And in first place, the very good VW Passat Estate. 4-wheel drive, cracking diesel engine, and if it was my choice, I'd put that first too. That's it for this week's Used Car Heaven. We'll be back again with another viewer at the same time next week. Join us then.